Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Geometry Scripting, as long as you're in the right room, that is. My name is Tim, and I'm a product specialist with Epic, and I'll be leading you through this adventure today. We're going to start out with just a little bit of background about what geometry scripting is, what it can do, how you use it, and then we're just going to jump right into some examples just to get right into the engine. So, without further ado, so geometry script in a nutshell. It's an experimental plugin right now in the engine, so it's by default off. It's really more of a beta, really. They just need to change the tag on it to beta. But it's mainly for manipulating, editing, and querying meshes in the engine. You can also use it at runtime for a lot of the nodes. The functions can be used in blueprints and Python. We'll be doing just blueprints today, though. At the core is the uDynamic Mesh class. Without getting too much into the C++ of it all, the dynamic mesh class is the data structure for all the static mesh data or skeletal mesh data or any kind of mesh data that goes into that. And by using that, we can get into all the different, vertex information, face information, material information, anything that has to do with the mesh, you can get from that and manipulate it. Mainly used in like editor utility widgets, asset actions, and procedural actors. I'm going to try to hit as many of these as I can today. Just some small examples just so you can kind of see the flavor of everything you can do with this. So with that, we'll just go ahead and dive in. If I can figure out how to get out of this presentation. There we go. Get this over here. All right. So this is the latest, just vanilla version that's available in the launcher. It's 5.1. So this all works right now. You can use it. It's available. One thing you need to do, though, is turn the plugin on. So we're just going to start out going up to Edit, Plugins. And you just have to search for Geometry Script. And if I could spell, there it is. And it's going to warn you that it's an experimental plugin. To start right, you can just say yes. And you're also going to have to restart real quick. Let me just save this real fast. And we have the nice wait for the reload. Oh, it's fast. That's good. There we go. All right. So once you get that activated, you're good to go. So let's start out with some asset actions. Those are, if you're not familiar with them, they're ways you can right-click on assets in your content browser, and you can launch different kinds of procedures or utility scripts, stuff like that, right out of the right-click menu. So I'm just going to make a new folder here. I'm going to call it Asset Actions. Oh, with the lights in your eyes, it's really hard to see the keyboard. All right. And now I'm just going to go to Editor Utilities. What you want to use for this, for Asset Actions, is the Editor Utility Blueprint. Click on that. You just want to go to Asset Action Utility. All right. I'm just going to name this Asset Actions again. There we go. All right. When you come in here, you're just going to get this blueprint graph. There's no scene or anything like that to deal with. It's just the graph. And the first thing we want to do, since this is only going to be usable on meshes, we're going to want to make sure that we only use this on static meshes. So we're going to click on Override, Get Supported Class, and we're just going to delete this node because we don't need it. Go to Select Class, and just look for static mesh. And there are a lot of static meshes. Just to be sure everybody can hear me okay? You talking about? Okay. So we do that, we compile. Now we can make a new function. And for this particular one, we're just going to do a bevel. So right-click on a static mesh, and we'll just add a bevel to it. So let's call this bevel. All right. So The first thing we want to do is we're going to want to get selected assets. Because in the content browser, you can select as many assets as you want to do this particular function on. So once we get that, we're going to want to iterate through all those. So we're going to do a for each loop. Pick that up. Let me zoom in a little bit. Everybody see that okay? All right. So now for each element in this, we're going to want to make sure we're using static meshes. So we're going to do a cast to static mesh. Yep, again, can't spell. There we go. And we want to make sure we do static mesh, not static mesh hashed or anything like that. We want the pure static mesh. We're going to check for that. And once we get that, we want to make a local variable, just so we have that mesh. We'll just go ahead and call this hello. It's not letting me rename it. There we go. Let's call this current static mesh, current SM. All right. So now what we need to do is to, when you use dynamic meshes, you need to create them. And the best way to do that for performance and things like that is to create a dynamic mesh pool. That kind of keeps track of all the different dynamic meshes, and you just request for one out of that pool. So that's the next thing we do. So we're going to create actually, the easiest way to find it is just hit pool. There's not too many pools in there. So we're going to create this pool, and now out of the pool, we need to request a mesh. So now out of this, we hover over the pin here, we see that we got a dynamic mesh object reference. So from there, we're going to, sorry, just 1 second, checking my notes, sure I'm doing this right. We're going to want to go out of that and copy this the static mesh. So how this works is you get the static mesh in your asset browser. You're going to want to copy that static mesh information onto the dynamic mesh, and then you do all your procedures and manipulations on that dynamic mesh. Then you'll copy that information back to the static mesh. So just be aware that if you have a static mesh in your content browser and you do anything to it, your static mesh in your content browser will change. It'll take all those changes you did and it'll become that. So we're going to pull off of this pin, and we're just going to look for copy mesh to static mesh. All right. Now I made that variable for this reason, so we can just drag this out. This is the current static mesh we have, and it's looking for the static mesh to copy from. We don't really need to worry about the options or the, we can just leave all these at default for now. And let's see. So now we want to go ahead and, for this procedure, we're going to need to make polygroups on the mesh. Polygroups in the dynamic mesh, basically, I'm going to use a cube, and the cube will have all the faces, and it needs a polygroup on each section that you want to do manipulations on. It's kind of a way of telling the dynamic mesh what parts you're going to be doing these operations on. So basically, to do that, we're just going to drag off of this, and I'm going to look for polygroups. And we're going to want to compute polygroups from angle threshold. We're going to assume this was a success, so we're just going to go off that. So the angle threshold is just the angle between the faces. So like on a cube, it's 90 degrees for all the different ones. So you're looking for the minimum angle to be above that to have a different polygroup on. So for example, this is set to a crease angle of 15, so anything over 15 degrees difference between the faces will get its own polygroup. So since it's a cube, we're plenty fine with that. It's 90 degrees, so it'll be all right. So now that we've got the polygroups, we can go ahead and do a bevel. And we're going to apply the mesh polygroup, apply mesh polygroup bevel. So now it's going to apply the bevel to all the different polygroups that we made. And the nice thing too about dynamic mesh nodes, the way they're made up, is you can daisy chain them. So it's still the same dynamic mesh going from here to here, and then it kind of has the operation done to it, and then it's just passed out the other side. So you don't have to keep connecting a different variable each time along. So it's really nice you can do that. And on this, we do want to do the options. We'll drag off of this and make geometry script mesh bevel options. So in here, the main one we want to worry about, excuse me, is bevel distance. That's just going to be, your bevel, width. And just from messing with this earlier, I know that 3 is going to be a good value for this. And you can set this up with a variable to, control it dynamically and things like that if you'd like to. For this one, we're just going to leave it at 3. Let's see. Sure. Sorry, 1 second. No, that's all right. So the last thing we need to do, so the bevel is put on there. The last thing we want to do, since we made this dynamic mesh pool, we want to make sure we release the mesh back to the pool. So it's more of a, a performance issue. So off of this mesh pool, we're just going to drag off of that, go down here, and we're going to go release. Oops, it's not release. Sorry, it's return mesh. Pardon my wires going everywhere here. I know that's drives me crazy. We'll clean this up a little bit. Satisfy my OCD. And the mesh going back into that, we're going to want to just want to use the dynamic mesh, which is right coming out of here. Again, the daisy chain is really nice. So that'll return the mesh after we're done. I did forget to do something. I'm going to disconnect this and save this for a second here. We got to copy that back to the static mesh. So copy mesh. Now if we made the adjustments, copy mesh to static mesh, and it wants that static mesh again, so we're going to bring this down here, get static mesh, and bring that up. Again, we don't really need to worry about the options for this particular case. So on a success, and go up to that, and drag this onto here. Did I forget something?
The first copy is also a copy too.
Copy mesh to static mesh.
From.
Oh, you're right. Yep. Sorry. It's my first time doing presentations, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome. Thank you very much. That was Ryan Schmidt. He was the mastermind behind all this, so round of applause for him. Be great. Yes, he is correct. So we want to do a copy from, nope. From static mesh. That makes sense. Drag down up here. We'll get this out of the way. Static mesh. All right. Thank you, because I had a feeling I was doing something wrong, and I'm glad he was sitting in the audience. Let's go up to that. Let's double check. Press mesh. Copy from. We get the polygroups. We're doing the bevel. And now we're copying it back to the static mesh and returning the mesh back to the pool. All right, I think we're good. So just test this out. We'll go back in here. One of the easiest ways is to get a mesh to mess around with. You can just go into modeling tools, click on box, and we got a box. Just hit accept. Now these are usually placed into your maps folder if you have one under generated. So if we right click on that, we're going to look for scripted asset actions. There's our bevel, and there's our bevel in there. So it's just that simple. This is great because it'll work on, if you instance this out, it'll work on all the different instances you do. It's just a really quick way to do different techniques or procedures you want to do on these meshes that would take a little bit more time if you had to do it through the modeling tools. Show you one more real quick one just to show that you can do 2 of these. We'll do another one that's was a popular one when we were making these tools. Do a flip normals. So basically, it's going to be almost exactly the same as this. And if I was probably doing a bunch of tools, I'd just separate this whole beginning part out to its own maybe function or something or a macro just to not have to copy and paste it all over and over again. But since we're pressed for a little bit of time, we'll go ahead and grab this whole beginning part all the way up to, actually, you know what, we'll just grab the whole thing. We'll copy it. We'll go over to this flip normals one. And we'll paste it. Because it's going to be the same procedures pretty much. We're going to get selected assets, go through all the selected assets, get the static mesh, create a mesh pool, request the mesh. The only thing we got to watch out for is anytime you see these grade variables, you got to make sure that you make a new one because they're from the other function, or from the other function. So I'm going to make this local variable, and then we're all set. We're copying the mesh, copy mesh from static mesh, but now we want to get rid of these couple nodes here. And all we got to do to change it is just drag this out, and we go flip normals. So it's real easy to make these tools very quickly. And there are approximately close to 200. I don't know, Ryan, are we over 200 yet nodes? So we're over 200 nodes for the geometry scripting, so that you can do a lot of stuff. So you could set up an entire pipeline of tools just for asset actions and just give that to your artists or whoever needs them for just rapid adjustments of meshes as you need them, depending on your pipeline. So we'll go ahead and just compile this, save it. Now let's go back to the one we did. Go back here, we got flip normals, and we flip the normals. So those are asset actions. Just want to show you those really quick. Those are the kind of things you can do really easy. They're real fast and simple ones, just kind of one-offs for different kinds of procedures you may need to do. But let's move on to, we'll do this procedural mesh. It's a fun one. So procedural mesh, let me just get this out of here. And we'll go back to select. All right. I'm going to make a new folder. Let's call it editor utility widgets, I guess, for now. Even though it's not really going to be one of those. So for this particular one, you're going to want to go to your blueprint class because it's going to be a generated mesh actor in your scene. So you click on that, and then you want to go to all classes and go look for generated. And you're going to want generated dynamic mesh actor. Select that. And we'll just call this, I don't know, whoa, okay, that crashed. Awesome. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Technical difficulties. Let me restart this real quick. At least I finished the last one before we started the next one, so that's a good thing. All right. Sorry about that, guys. 1 second. And of course, I don't think any of that was saved. Oh, no, wait. There we go. All right. There we go. Hopefully we should be good. Hopefully that's not an issue all the time. All right, so back to generated dynamic mesh actor. Try this, cross your fingers. You know what, I'm just gonna leave the name as new blueprint, because that's where it crashed last time. Don't tempt the Unreal gods. So we're gonna go up into here. You can see already it's a little bit different because it does have the viewport. But we're going to want to go into the event graph. And what we're going to look for now is Let me think, what's the name of it again? I can never remember the names of these things sometimes. Rebuild, thank you. Let's see here. There it is. Event on rebuild generated mesh. So this is going to fire off every time you make changes to the mesh when you're doing anything in the editor. So it's mainly for this actor, and I believe this actor is still, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, because things change on this daily. But this is still only used in the editor. Editor only. Okay. So this you can't use in runtime, just in the editor. But it's great for doing things like if you're doing prototyping levels and things like that, you want to build levels quickly, you can use these tools. Similar to the Lyra sample, if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend downloading that sample. It has a lot of these geometry script tools in it that they use to create all the levels and stuff in that sample. But so for this, we're going to just drag right off of this. It's already got this dynamic mesh component, so we have a dynamic mesh ready. I'm just going to promote this to a variable. And we'll go ahead and rename this. We'll just call this dynamic mesh. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take that dynamic mesh. This hasn't any association with any other static meshes. We're just kind of making this on the fly. So we're going to append a box to this. Append a box. So what this does is going to create a box. Pretty straightforward. And what I'm going to do in addition is I'm going to make a new variable. Just going to call it box size. And I'm going to change this to a vector. And over in the details, I'm going to make sure I have instance editable on. And I'm also going to have show 3D widget clicked. And go ahead and compile. And I'm just going to default this to, we'll say, I don't know, 100, maybe 20, and we'll say 100. And then I'm going to drag this out. I get it. Now I'm going to split the struct pin and just have these drive the dimensions of the box. So if I compile this and go on out here, you can just drag this actor into the scene, and you'll have this little guy here that you can adjust using this manipulator. So if you just drag this out, it'll adjust the size, the height, and the depth of the box so that you can make walls or anything you want. And this can be a lot more complex than this. You can do a lot of different things with this kind of stuff. But let's make this a little bit more interesting, and we'll add another mesh here and do a Boolean on this. So I believe I want to get a compute mesh. Here, compute mesh pool. There it is. This is basically the same thing as the other one we used, but this one's especially for the actor version of the of dynamic mesh. So now we do the same thing. We request a mesh. All right. Now we're going to append another box to this mesh. And this is going to be our Boolean that you won't see that is knocking a hole in our other mesh. So I'm going to open up this transform, split the struct pin on that. And then I'm going to make another variable. We're going to call this, since it's Boolean, we'll just call it bool size. I'm sorry. Yeah. Actually, bool mesh. We'll just call it bool mesh. Let's drag that out. And we're going to want to do the same thing. So we'll compile quick just so we get the defaults. I'm going to make this instance editable and show 3D widget and split this struct pin. And this will control the size of this particular mesh that we use for cutting out the other one. So now we want to make one more. We're going to call this one bool location. I'll drag that in as well. compile. And again, we want to make it instance editable and show 3D widget because this is going to control where you want to put this particular knockout.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Sure, sorry. Yeah, if there's anything you guys can't see, just let me know. Or if you have any questions, just let me know. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to want to connect this to location. And we'll go ahead and compile. And I'm going to make a variable out of this. Just call this bool mesh. Oh, and it didn't type. All right, let me try that again. Bool. What? Oh, my bad. All right, we're going to change this name to, thank you for catching that. I'm going to change this one to actually size, which I think is what I was originally going to do. I have box size. Yeah. But keep calling out my, let me know. I am scatterbrained. So we're going to name this bool, I think, mesh, right? Yeah. All right. We got that now. And we're going to want to go ahead and make a Boolean out of this. So we're going to drag this out and look for mesh Boolean. We actually don't want this to be the target. It just automatically selected that. So we're going to drag this down to tool instead. So this will be the tool that we use to knock out the Boolean for this particular procedure. So we want the dynamic mesh to be the target. That's the first box we made. So drag that up there. And the operation we're going to do is a subtract operation. Now I'm going to hit compile, save. If we go back out here, whoops. Oh, you know what? I don't think I put any sizes on this. Let me go back. Hope this had a little bit of size to it. Do 50, 50, and 50. How about that? There we go. There we go. So now you have the box size control over here, which will change, the outside part, and the Boolean will stay where it is. And then we can change the size of this on the fly to be, tall door. We can make it be, use the location to move it around. If you want more of a tunnel size, you can spread it out. Or if you wanted like an actual tunnel, we could drag this way out and then get this one. And now you got just a full tunnel. So it's just a great way of rapidly prototyping different layouts. And there is ways to save this mesh now out as its own static mesh. I probably won't be going through that because I have only about 15 minutes left. But that way you can save that out. It's kind of what the Lyra does. It keeps all of these kind of things under the level, and then you can use those to adjust the actual level architecture. You kind of turn those back on, and it turns on all the instances of them up in the level, and you can re-edit those and then kind of bake them back out. But this is really a great tool to use for prototyping. So let's see, I should have enough time to do one more. I have a utility widget that I've used several times in the past for different projects. So for this one, we'll go and hit, let's see, utility, editor utilities, utility widget. All right, there we go. So this one, it's real simple. Details view, I don't know if you've used it. It's real handy for a lot of different things. Just going to put that up in the corner there. Then what I do? I hit size instead. That's not what I want to do. I tell you, it's terrible getting old because you can't see what you're typing anymore. Let's see. We'll stretch this out a little bit. Now, also, I have to ask you not to make fun of my UMG skills because they are awful. Much more of a prototyping type of guy. Get what I need to get the job done. So now we're just gonna make this font a little smaller so it's not taking up the entire room. And we'll just call this delete faces. So what this tool is gonna do is it is going to take a static mesh and that is in your level, and it'll look at the, you'll be able to, in the tool, you'll be able to choose what materials you want to delete off of the static mesh. So it's gonna look for the materials and it'll actually delete the faces from that static mesh. Ran into this a lot doing enterprise work for CAD files where you wanted to get rid of, like if they bring in a car or something and they just didn't want the windows in there for whatever reason, they'd grab the material using this tool of the windows, and then they'd just go through the entire model and look for anywhere where the window material is applied and would delete all those faces. So let's go on into graph. To get that details view to work right, we're going to need to make a variable here, and we'll call that materials to delete. But we don't want Boolean, we want to do a material. We're going to want to do an array for that. Now, the important part for detailed view to do is to make a category for this. So we'll just call it material view. And we will compile and save that. And one other thing we don't need these two, but we do need pre-construct. So we want to drag this detail view out that we made in the designer. Whoops, and I moved it before I did get. There we go. And we're going to want to set the object for it. So this is basically so it knows what details it's pointing to. And since we're using it for this widget, we're just going to get a reference to self. There we go. And compile, save that. Now we're going to want to jump back over to here, and you can see it kind of made it, but it made it with everything in it. We don't want everything. We just want the variable we had in the other one. So we go over to categories to show, click on plus, and then we go material view, the category we had in the other one, and hit compile. And now we just have, sorry, that's probably super small for you guys. Materials to delete is in here now. Now we can just jump back over to the graph. All right. Now we're going to have to go through and one more thing, sorry. I got to hit the button here and hit on clicked. So this is the button that's going to launch, the whole code. So on clicked, now we got that. And again, we're going to have to get the selected actors that we have, but in this case, we're going to need to use the editor subsystem for this. So editor actor subsystem. And then from that, we're going to want to look for selected. And we're going to get the selected level actors. And again, we're going to want to go through all these for each. And we're also going to want to check to see again, we're going to cast to a static mesh just because we want to make sure that we're only using that particular type of object. So we'll go ahead and grab this element and cast a static as to static mesh actor. Okay. Now from the actor, we can only use static meshes for dynamic mesh stuff, so we have to drill down to the actual static mesh. So from this, we're just going to get the static mesh component, and then we're going to get the actual static mesh from that. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and promote this to a variable. All right. Now we have that done. We're going to go ahead and create the dynamic mesh pool again. You can kind of see a similarity between the stuff we're doing here. So it's a lot of the same sort of beginning parts, and then in the middle is where all the real work gets done. So we're going to look for pool. And then we're going to go ahead and request a mesh. And we'll go ahead and make this a variable as well. Let's call it dynamic mesh. Sorry, let me zoom in. It looks a lot bigger on my screen, so I apologize. Little trick I actually just found out yesterday. If you zoom into your graph and it stops, the zoom will stop and it still seems like it's too far away. If you hold control and hit the wheel, it'll keep zooming in. Maybe a lot of you know that already. This is the first time I learned it. So you learn something new every day. Which works great for presentations, so you can zoom in farther. So now that we got the dynamic mesh set, we're going to go ahead and let me move my notes over so I don't miss anything again. Okay, so now we're going to, we have to actually, before we copy the static mesh over to the dynamic mesh, we want to get the materials off of the static mesh. So we're going to grab the static mesh variable, and we're going to look for section, and we're going to want to get section material list from static mesh. This is a little bit different than get materials because it's looking for the section material as opposed to just the materials you see if you click on details. It's a little bit different. We want to make sure we get that, and after that we're going to want to promote these. It creates a material list array from all the materials that are in that static mesh, and it also creates a material index which references back to the actual material IDs that are in the static mesh. So we want to make a variable out of both those so we can use them later. Make one there and there. All right. Sorry, let me zoom back in. Doesn't give me a lot of room when I zoom in. So after that, now we can go ahead and copy to a static mesh, or copy from static mesh to the dynamic mesh. So we'll grab our dynamic mesh, and we'll go copy mesh from static mesh, and we'll get our actual static mesh and plug it in. There we go. And again, we don't really need to worry about the asset options at the moment. Toward the end of this, we do, but right now we're good. So once we do that, we're going to need our materials to delete. That's from our interface that we actually started out with in the widget, and that's going to be the list of all the materials we actually do want to delete. So we're going to grab that, bring that out here, and we're going to iterate through all these. So we're going to need another for loop. Grab that. Also, too, just to mention, when you use if you plug it into the dynamic mesh here to something, and if you don't use this output pin, it doesn't matter. It's always saved into this dynamic mesh, so you can go a bunch of nodes down and use that dynamic mesh variable again, and it'll still be the same dynamic mesh, which is nice. So for this, we're going to go and grab our material list now. So we've got to check to see if these materials to delete are in this material list. So we're going to go on up and do yet another for loop. For each. Go on up here. Sorry, I got to zoom out a little bit. Hopefully you guys can still see that. So now we're going to check to see if this one is actually equaled to the ones we're looking for. So it's going to checking this one against each one of these. And if they're equal, then that's one of the ones we want to delete. So we're going to do a branch here. And then once we get out of that, we're going to want to do delete the triangles of the actual mesh. So we're going to want to grab the dynamic mesh again, bring that on over. And then we're going to look for delete triangles by material ID. So that's going to go through and look for that particular material on all the different triangle faces and just delete the ones that are a match. Now for the material ID, we're going to use the the material index array that we got before. We're going to grab that, bring that over, and then we're going to get the array index coming from this, because this material array and this material index, they're in step with each other, so we can use the same index. And actually, oops, we use this and do a get. Drag this a lot out of the way here. We're just going to move this down here, get that particular material index, and pump that right into there. So now that'll handle all the deleting of all those triangles. So once that's done, when we delete the triangles of the mesh, some of those materials now are irrelevant. They don't have any geometry attached to them at all. So we're going to want to get those out of the material stack and just kind of compact down that material stack so it doesn't have that unnecessary material in there. So to do that, we're just going to use compact material IDs. So the target mesh is going to be our dynamic mesh. So let's grab that again, bring that in. And the source material list is just going to be the material list we got from the original static mesh. We're going to get that. So it's going to compare that to what is missing, and that way I'll know which ones to get rid of. So next we're going to go and we're going to copy this to the static mesh. So we can just go right out of here. Copy mesh to static mesh. There we go. And grab the static mesh, bring that on over. All right, so here's an example where we do need to get into the options. So we're going to grab the options, just drag off of it, and you're going to want to make geometry script copy mesh to asset options. That's a mouthful. And we're going to move that out of the way because this takes up a lot of room. Open that up a bit. So you can see in here some of the options you have. The one we want to make sure we're going to replace the materials that are in there, that are in the static mesh. And we're going to want to use the materials. The new materials are going to be this new compacted material list. So that way it'll get rid of the materials we don't need anymore. Let's see. Now we want to, and the one thing I didn't do, but I'm going to be bad and just use this wire and go all the way over here instead of moving stuff around. I'm running out of time. Going to do return the meshes. I'm going to return all meshes. And that will return the mesh back to the pool so that next time we go around, we'll use that mesh basically again out of the pool. This is going to drive me crazy, but I'm going to leave it because we're running out of time. So the one last thing we need to do is make sure we clear out this materials to delete. Clear. That way, each time we use the tool, it'll have a fresh list. So I'm going to go ahead and grab, I have this cube here, and it's larger than that one. It just has some simple materials. You can see them over here. It's just some, red, green, blue, yellow. So if we want to go in here and we'll launch the utility widget, which you can see here, pay no attention to the terrible interface. All right. So we hit plus. It's going to add that on there. We'll go ahead and get rid of, we'll get rid of the blue. Now delete face, and bam, that one's gone. The rest of them stay there. And say you want to get rid of, the orange one now. How about the orange and the red? We'll do two of them. Orange, and of course, didn't make the thing big enough. We'll just get rid of the orange one. Oops, I didn't select it. Always good to select your object. And there you go. So that way you can kind of go through really quickly, and if you have a whole big long list of things you need to delete, you can just put them all in there, select your objects in the scene, and just delete them all. And now I've pretty much run out of time. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Thank you.